Okay, I'm going to do a quick sort of review of what we talked about yesterday. So, things we should be able to do with this last section before we have a little quiz. Know the difference between measures of central tendency, measures of dispersion. Then we should be able to do range, mean deviation, variance, and standard deviation. So when we think of that, I'm just going through the basics. Measures of central tendency are like your mean, median, mode. Those are really giving you average. Now, because average could be, we don't say, hey, the mean hair color is brown. We would use the mode, which would be the average. So you don't want to, you want to think of mean as different than average. They could all be used for average. Measures of dispersion, which we talked about mainly yesterday, is spread. How spread out is a set of data? So the first thing we talked about is range. Range is the one that you guys really know. The range is the difference between the highest and the lowest score, lowest number. So, you could look at this set of data, which we did look at. 9 was our smallest number, 41 was our biggest number. If we want to find the range, we do 41 minus 9, and we get 32. Thing with range is it really doesn't tell you anything except for, hey, there's 32 numbers between the smallest and the biggest. So what we did this, me just sort of looking. If I asked you the range of this, 68 minus 8, 60. The biggest minus the smallest. If someone changed the number 34 and actually put it as 43, it wouldn't matter, because even if that was 43, the biggest number minus the smallest number is still 60. So the range wouldn't change, but other measures would change. So what we started to talk about was the distance each entry was from the mean. So, this, which we had done, a better measure would be to take an average of how far each number is from the mean. So what we were really looking at is mean deviation. So mean deviation is, really how far the average of how far each number is from the mean. So what we did here is we could first, I think I have this on the, maybe just right here. We would find the mean. So, we found the mean by adding all those numbers up and then dividing. There were 10 numbers, so the mean was 23. So then what did I do for this next column? I subtracted 32 minus 23, 32 minus 5. 32 minus 23. 18 minus 23. 15 minus 23. Remember that X bar is the symbol for mean. So you take the number minus the mean. But what happens is some can be positive, some can be negative. So that's really where that came up. So then what we're going to be asked for is the mean absolute deviation and the variance. So we talked about really the mean absolute deviation is actually squaring those numbers because you don't want negatives. So it's either 5 to the right or 5 to the left. It's still 5 away. So if we square those, then we have all positives. And then your variance was your average of the mean squared deviations, which I'm going to give you steps to find that variance. But first, just to sort of give you, before I do that one, I'll do it right here. So we'll talk about the variance and I'll go back to it, but really we found the mean and we got 23. We subtracted each of those from 23, the 23 from the number. Then this next column would be x minus x bar, which is that column, squared. So really what we're doing is we're squaring 9. We're squaring -5. And remember, with a calculator, you have to put negatives in parentheses because anything multiplied by itself is going to be a positive. So then that's 64, that's 4 squared, 1 squared, 1 squared, 14 squared, 196, I think. 18 squared is 324. -7 squared is 49. 3 squared is 9. Okay, so then I want to average those. So that's really where I'm going to sort of show you your steps for the variance. And if I write them out, I think it will sort of help you. So you have to think you're given a set of data. Your first step is find the mean, which like on this table I found was 23, x bar. Second step, find the distance from the mean, which the distance from the mean is that second column, which is xi minus x bar. Third step, square those values. So that's really where I got 81, 25, 64, etc. So now, how are we going to finish finding the variance? We are going to add those numbers up. And divide by the number of data points we started with. So it's the same thing we divided when we found the mean. We divided by 10 numbers. So we would add all those numbers up. I forgot to add these up, so I'm going to just do it. 81 plus 25 plus 64 plus 16 plus 1 plus 1, 196, 324, 49, and 9. So we have 766 was our total. We're going to divide by how many numbers we had here, which was 10. So we divide by 10, and our variance is 76.6. Now, last thing, standard deviation. So I'm going to skip that one. When we're talking about standard deviation, really it's the only thing that's left. But the thing about the variance is you're squaring. So we did that because we had negatives. But the variance is a unit that's squared. And so it doesn't make much sense. So what you're going to see when you see data, the most common used measure of dispersion is the standard deviation. Now, really, what do you want? Why did I have to do all that other stuff? Main reason, the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. If you can find the variance, all you have to do is square root it to find the standard deviation. So, you go back to that example that we just had. How would I find the standard deviation? I'm going to, in my calculator, square root 76.6, and you'll just round it to about 2 decimal places. So it's 8.75. Now, what does that mean? On average, your numbers are 8.75 numbers from the mean. Now, with standard deviation, there's a normal curve, so there's more stats that we talk about once we find the standard deviation. So if I went back, just to give you guys a quick little example of this, I think it should go pretty quick. So if I'm asked to find the standard deviation, I got to find the variance first. So the first thing I do, find the mean, x bar. So with this example, I'm going to take those 5 numbers, 11 plus 13 plus 15 plus 28 plus 30. I get 97, and there's 5 numbers. So I divide by 5. My mean is 19.4. So that's x bar. Now, take every number and subtract 19.4. So I get negative 8.4. Here I would do 13 minus 19.4. I get negative 6.4. 15 minus 19.4. Negative 4.4. 28 minus 19.4. Now I'm going to have positives. 8.6. 30 minus 19.4. 10.6. Now I'm going to square them. So I'm going to take 8.4 squared. 70, and keep your decimals. 6.4 squared. 40.96. 4.4 squared. 19.36. 8.6 squared. 73.96. And then 10.6 squared is 112.36. You're going to add those up. So 112.36 plus 73.96 plus 19.36 plus 40.96 plus 70.56. That gave you 317.2, but you're averaging it. So you divide by how many numbers you added up. That's your variance. Your variance is 63.44. And that's what you did there. Last thing, how do you find the standard deviation? Square root 63.44. So if you square root 63.44, you get 7.96. So that's going through all the steps. Hopefully that is pretty self-explanatory, but it is a lot of steps. But you would have notes to remember what to do. Alrighty.